kitchen rug the other day. Everywhere.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh, hi everybody. We're talking about welcome to our A Storm of Swords reread. Sorry for the difference in times the last couple of weeks, but you know, we're women of the world and we've got things to do. So just to congratulate Clare, first of all, on her new job.
Thank you.
Clap in the chat for Clare. And yeah, so we are looking at Bran 2, Arya 5 this week.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit jet lagged.
And yes, welcome back to Europe to Catherine, who's been over in the east.
Yes,
the last week.
Yes. Oh, hi, Polish Pony is in the chat. Hi, Polish Pony. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
Yeah. So we were just nattering. We didn't actually touch on what we were gonna. We didn't touch on anything. Yeah, we were just nattering. So this week, yeah, Bran 2 to Arya 5, and I feel like this week is all about illicit affairs and illicit sex. It's alluded to in every single chapter. I don't know about you. What do you think?
I thought this was really heavy on ice and fire. Ice and fire in Bran's chapter, ice and fire in even Davos's chapter when they're talking about opposites, you know, night and day and black and white and ice and fire. And that seems to be a bit of a theme throughout at least a few of these chapters.
Hey, Sonny.
Yeah, and the dragons as well, obviously, the dragons at Astapor. That was quite a fiery experience. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think they're getting more. They seem to be stepping up more with the action. So There's more like that. What I realised actually, the Dany chapter this week is probably one of my favourite. Well, definitely one of my favourite Dany chapters. But I think when I was reading the book series for the first time, there was a real kind of like sort of, you know, fist pumping moment at the end of that chapter where that you feel like there's a real payoff to the read that you've done up to this point so far. You're beginning to get like some sort of payoff or progress or something.
Not only one of my favorite Dany chapters, definitely probably top 3 favorite Dany chapters. Probably my favorite Emilia Clarke moment in the entire Game of Thrones series so far. They do that very, very well in the show.
They do. Yeah.
Just the thousands of Unsullied, well, probably hundreds in the show, but still, like, it's just a great moment. The Bran chapter, I know you have a lot to say about it, the one that we're starting with. This is where Bran starts to get a little bit dull for me. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I know what's going to happen. It's like, come on. For me, I like the lore. I love that. Obviously, I love the laughing tree. All about that. But I can hear myself. Can I?
I've just turned. That's my phone. Sorry.
Okay. I have my Night of the Laughing Tree t-shirt on, so I do love this chapter for that. But in terms of what's going on, without that lore, there's very little to interest us with Bran right now because he needs to get across the north.
Yeah. But, it's just packed with stories, really, in the Bran chapter.
Mm-hmm. So so Bran, Mira, Hodor, and Jojen are traveling out north, and this is only our second Bran chapter, and we're a good bit through the book already. So a good bit through the first part of the book already. So I was surprised actually we've only had, but again, as I said, there's not much going on with Bran, so I suppose it's not that surprising. We get more information about the Cronall men, and obviously we get the story of the tourney at Harrenhal, where we can piece together the Rhaegar-Lyanna relationship and potentially Lyanna being the Knight of the Laughing Tree. But I want to start by asking you, because he talks about old Nan. When Mira starts to tell this story and he wonders what happened to old Nan and the other women at Winterfell, we know later that they're at the Dreadfort, but we don't know what has happened to old Nan. we presume she's dead later on, but I kind of feel she's not dead. I don't know. What do you think? As we go into Winds.
I think I'm starting to get really mixed up between the TV show and the books on these kind of details.
So they kind of they killed off the character, because the actress died. They did the same Ellen Payne in the TV.
But in the books, do we see her later on at the Dreadfort?
We hear that they took the women from Winterfell,
right?
To the Dreadfort. Yeah,
I feel as though she is still alive. Then I don't get the sense that. I think if she'd have died, we'd have known about it just as much as we knew about Lewin's death. There would have been a scene, or there would have been something, rather than just left to is she or isn't she?
She's a very, very old woman. Like Hodor's great-great-grandmother, is that right?
Yeah.
So there's so many things. There's so much information she has, as doddery as she is. So much information she has, but also she is one of the few people that can recognize who Bran and Rickon are going into Winds as well, like in the north. Like I know a lot of people have met them, but like that grew up with them, I guess, or that helped raise them, if you like. I think she might play an important role.
Yeah.
But yeah, the actor, the only reason she's out of the show is because the actress died.
Right. Okay.
And that actress was actually in Gavin and Stacey as well. So I loved it. She was the old woman that lived next door to Gwen.
Oh, was she?
Yeah. That has all the affairs with the young fellas.
Oh, the real like foul mouth one.
Yeah. She's brilliant. So that was my only question about Old Nan. We hear Mira say that the neck is full of dead knights under the water who either tried to get into Greywater or failed or whatever. And I just wonder, will they stay dead? Like, that would be a great scene if the Whites get that far to reanimate, to resurrect those dead knights under Greywater. I think that'd be great.
Yeah. Sonny Frank. Hi, Sonny Frank is also just in response to that. Mira tells Bran the Crannog men have magic and can change earth to water and can talk to trees and can also breathe in the mud, which I presume means that they can kind of breathe in the swamps as well. And there's this talk of all the magic of my people, the brave Crannogmen who went off to sort of, learn the magic of the Crannogmen. So I'm
a little bit weary of them though, because like from my perspective, the Irish are very brave. Okay. Like from everybody's perspective, like your countrymen are the bravest, your tribesmen are the bravest. You're the best. And I feel like we should maybe be a bit more suspicious of them.
But do you think, I agree about the, we are brave and we're the greatest, but she's claiming that they have magical powers.
Yeah.
And I don't think that line was in this chapter for no reason, that there are no knights in the neck apart from the ones that are in the swamps. I think something magical is probably going to happen at Greywater Watch at some point. I mean, the fact that they can't find it in the first place is this kind of magical element to it.
That's true. But the story of the little Crannog man who gets bullied by the squires and all that kind of thing, I mean, he doesn't really show any great abilities there to be able to defend himself with any kind of magic.
No, but if the Crannogmen generally, some of them have some kind of a skill for Crannog magic. Maybe it's a form of old magic somehow. Then maybe, oh my God, what's his
Howland?
Howland Reed, yes, maybe Howland Reed is imbued with the kind of Crannogman magic, and he obviously spent a bit of time kicking around with Ned and the whole, you know, Tower of Joy incident.
Oh my God,
so
I just got like an image of them dressed as mods.
Yeah. Just kicking around as teenagers.
Yeah. With combs. Yeah, no, definitely. But I mean, it's safe to assume that with Jojen becoming much stronger in his powers and things like that, that potentially, again, as with all things, with the arrival of the dragons into the world again, their powers have been strengthened, and so probably helping them stay safe in the neck. That their abilities are maybe strengthened. So what would you, where would you like to go to first in this chapter?
Oh, hello to Victoria as well.
Hi, Victoria.
Victoria's had some of my D-stash polishes. Yeah, I think in this chapter, one of the things that I just want to point out is the Liddell in the cave before they get into the story about the Night of the Laughing Tree or the Great Tourney at Harrenhal. They bump
not
into
the supermarket, obviously.
Yeah, the little cave. And just what he says, and the fact that there are these Northmen in tribes like the Flints, and we learn that actually there's a Flint in the Stark line. You know, they seem to be kind of interchangeable, and it just almost makes me think, were the Starks at one point just like a mountain clan that climbed down from the mountain, a mountain clan, and just happened to be in the vicinity of Winterfell when something magical happened and winter fell? And there's some sort of magic attached to that's why there must always be a Stark. I mean, this was referenced again in this chapter. Oh, when there's a Stark in Winterfell, the world is wonderful, you know, everything is amazing, and there has to be a Stark in Winterfell. Clearly this Liddell knows who Bran is, and not only that, this Liddell and the other, the Norries and the Flints, but they seem to, you know, for them being short of like Google and the internet, these people seem to know a lot. Considering where they're located, they seem to know exactly what Mormont's ravens had said and what messages they'd carried back to the wall. They seem to know what's happening in Winterfell, which is leagues away actually from where they are. They seem to know exactly what's going on in terms of threats and attacks to the north. Like there are squids in the, you know, which obviously means there are Ironborn in the Wolf's Wood, and there are flayed men, so Boltons. So they know, you know, you would think that they're quite far remote. They're way up in the hills in the north near the wall. You can practically see it from where they are. Yet they seem to have an eye on things that are going on way south of where they're located, which I thought was interesting. And clearly, you know, I think he was there to kind of keep an eye on Bran, or maybe it was just to check out, is this actually Bran or not? Is this the Stark that should be in Winterfell and isn't? And he also refers to ghosts, doesn't he? There's only ghosts. There's no, which again alludes to the crypts of Winterfell.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if there's green seers there, because we do get reference to people with sight in the next two chapters, in Davos and in Jon. So it wouldn't. That may be one way in which they're able to know all of this stuff in such great detail.
They can like walk into the crows and things like that.
Yeah, maybe. But then, there's a lot of tunnel stuff coming up with Jon as well. So there's a lot of ways to get in and out of the north without being seen, if you like, without having magic as well. So So
we get the story about the well, first of all, the Crannogman who travels to the Isle of Faces looking for green men, And it sounds like in the story that he met some green men, but we don't hear about it. That's a story for another time. And then we focus on this story, which is from the great tourney at Harrenhal. And we're not giving any kind of date or time of when this is, but we're led to believe that it was the tourney at Harrenhal where Rhaegar apparently made off with Lyanna. But there's some questions here for me straight off the bat. Like, but basically the big question in all of this scene for me, not necessarily is who is the Knight of the Laughing Tree, or which one was the wild wolf, which one was the quiet, none of that really interests me as much as what song was the Dragon Prince singing that made the wolf maid cry. What was that song? Because that's the thing that hinges on people think it was a love song and it pulled on a heartstrings. So there's so many things to think about. What was the context of that song? Was it because the way, and again, it could just be the way I'm interpreting this, but the way Mira is describing this part of the story to Bran, to me, it sounds like it was more of an emotional thing, like it was a sad song that made her cry, rather than it being this epic love song that made her fall in love and get over emotional. It was more that, she had this sniffle because of this song. And I remember years ago, somebody in like one of the Song of Ice and Fire podcast chat things or in comments or something, and somebody saying that I mean, there's a number of things you could say here. You could say this particular song is the Song of Ice and Fire, and this is what the whole, if you knew the answer to that question, you'd know everything that was going to be happening. I don't necessarily think that's the case, although it could be a song that's related to ice and fire. But I do remember somebody, and I'm trying to racking my brain to remember who it was, and I can't, but who said that it was this Dany Flint song, and and because it was such a sad song, and it was like a woman who had, I suppose, if she was the Knight of the Laughing Tree, and it was a woman who'd kind of gone in disguise in a usual male role, and this horrendous thing had happened to her up at the wall, because Dany Flint was a woman disguised as a man to join the Night's Watch, and she got discovered and like raped and murdered and what have you by the Black Brothers of the Night's Watch. It could have been the song that was related to that kind of pulled it. It's just, if we knew what that song was, I think we would be able to, I suppose it would take the enjoyment out of it, but I think we would be able to figure out a lot. Especially this whole Tower of Joy thing. I think it hinges on what was the song that Rhaegar or the Dragon Prince sang to the Wolf Maid, and what was it about that song that made her cry when she wasn't the kind of person to normally cry, because her brothers were jibbing her about that. They were like, they were kind of taking the piss out of her a bit for getting emotional over this song, which again makes me feel as though it wasn't I've fallen in love and I'm, take me away on some fairy tale, let's run away together and have a baby. And it's like, there's something not quite right about this. And it starts to, it certainly manifests itself in this chapter for me, in this story.
So it wasn't Wonderwall. Like angels, maybe. Yeah. I always thought, I think the suggestion is that Rhaegar finds her before this, and that the song he sings is some sort of coded message,
right,
that convinces her that she does need to go with him, that convinces her that,
and she's crying because she doesn't want to, but she knows that she has to.
Because, in the next chapter, the very next chapter with Davos, we get references to Summerhall. and that's where Rhaegar got the prophecy, right? Was that Summerhall? Or no, that's where the fire was.
Yeah, that's where he was born. He was born at Summerhall.
Where did he get the prophecy? I thought he got it at Summerhall as well. No,
it might have been. I think he used to go back to the ruins, didn't he?
I can't remember where he got the prophecy now. Now I'm completely confused myself. But there's something. I think there's something. So we're both on. I operate under the belief that Lyanna is the Knight of the Laughing Tree, and that's just where I just think it makes sense. But I said that at the beginning of this, that for me, these chapters all allude to some sort of illicit sex or illicit affair. And yes, Rhaegar and Lyanna is very, very important, but potentially the more important, or at least as important, is another affair that's alluded to, which is Ned and Ashara. Which I'm not the first to say that. Everybody talks about that too. But that's the way that's spoken of seems far more intense.
Yes,
in a way,
it does. It does
in this chapter, and especially because Jojen and Mira keep interrupting, going, "Are you sure he's never told you this story?
Yeah,
Are you sure you never heard this story?"
So,
which is annoying.
Which implies that they're very familiar with this story, and they would have assumed that there's nothing holding Ned back from telling his own children this story. So what's the thing that they don't know?
It's annoying because it's like, well, clearly he hasn't heard the story. Will you just tell him everything?
Yeah.
Or it's very clever on their part because they can see he isn't really listening anyway. Like Bran isn't really picking up. He isn't picking up the threads of what they're saying.
Or maybe they're just trying to like drop clues without. Yeah, I mean, maybe it is a storytelling thing, and maybe it is just like, why wouldn't you just sit down and just tell him everything that you know about, why is it a story for another time? The whole, looking for green men on the Isle of Faces. Why can't you just say he met them? This happened.
Yeah.
It is infuriating.
Sorry, guys, you have to get back to Westeros Facebook. Like, you're going up and down mountains. Just tell the stories, get you through.
Exactly.
Another thing that kind of struck me this time, reading this chapter, having seen the previous season, and sorry if you haven't seen that season, there will be a little bit of a spoiler here for Tower of Joy. So I'll wave my hand, and when I stop waving my hand, when I wave it again, you can listen. So at the Tower of Joy in the latest series, and I know I spoke a lot about this when we did our House Polished discussion, the scene at the Tower of Joy, the reason Arthur Dane is defeated is because Howland Reed stabs him in the back. Bran is shocked by how dishonorable this is. It just seems nasty to him. It makes more sense if Lyanna had saved Howland for him to do whatever it takes to get rid of this guy, to make sure that Ned gets into Lyanna. What doesn't make sense is, where is Howland? Why isn't Howland in that room with Ned? Or is he in that room with Ned?
Well, there's a whole number. I mean, it could be. You could say that the reason it happened like that in the TV show, that shocking revelation for Bran, is because it's to illustrate to him, don't believe everything that your father told you when you were growing up, because look, here's the truth of it. So what else might he have lied about?
I think something like that will have happened at the Tower of Joy, because we keep getting this idea that the Cronall men are sneaky. They'll
possibly magical.
Yeah, they'll do things that are kind of a bit underhanded. Like nobody really trusts them, and there has to be a reason for that. And I do think it'll come back to whatever Howland did at the Tower of Joy. I'm not sure if it'll be as obvious as stabbing someone in the back.
But just something dishonorable.
it could be a poisoned blade of some sort. It could be, it could be something like that, which is kind of the Craven's weapon to use poison as well. So that would kind
of... Or it could be using the magical powers that he's got as a Crannogman to do things like pull down the tower. When you see that on the TV show and you go, how did Ned pull that down with his bare hands and use the bricks to bury everyone at that? So maybe it could be just like, nobody's ever seen this kind of power before, or magical ability, and they do. Or it could just be the Crannogmen are small, so in order to protect themselves, they have to use tactics that are not about physical prowess. So they have to be sneaky. They have to use the location and the environment that they're in. Maybe they've got magical powers, maybe they haven't, but there's something that we're not being told here in this Bran story, or in this Bran chapter, with the stories that are being told to Bran and to us as readers. There's some obvious things that we're not being told, and they're holding back for a specific reason.
And I do think, like I was listening to a podcast on hunting today for some reason, but anyway, and then I was thinking about this Mira thing about her being such a good hunter, which isn't impossible for somebody her age, but it is very difficult to be a good hunter. And I mentioned this before. Animals are scarce in the world right now, and they've been scarce since a Game of Thrones. Animals have started becoming more scarce. It's one of the reasons why Robert's hunt lasts so long, I'm guessing, with winter coming. But there's something like it's almost as if she has an advantage there that maybe she shouldn't have. I feel like whatever they're able to do, it's an unnatural, unfair advantage that when we find out more about what they're capable of, I think we may not entirely like them as much. I feel like with everybody in this series, I'm like, I don't want to love anyone too much because I think they're going to disappoint me. Like when we get to the Tyrion scene with Sansa, it's like, really? Are you really going to be in Tyrion's corner after that scene? It's really weird.
Yeah, it is weird. Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like that there is that with almost every character, that every character has this side that like, I can't be totally comfortable with that. With the exception of maybe Jon.
But then we're all like that, though, aren't we?
Yeah, I definitely use magic to move places.
I breathe in mud, only on Saturdays, but
But yeah, so the only other thing I had written down here for this chapter is that Hodor liked it when Bran said his name. And I wasn't really sure what that is. There seems to be more of a push in this chapter that, towards Bran warging him, but I don't know if Bran, if it's Hodor willing Bran to warg him. So he kind of gets a break from being Hodor. I wondered, was that it? This like,
maybe,
please.
Yeah.
That kind of
break from it.
Maybe, yeah. So, but yeah, did you have anything else then for Bran 2?
No, not really. No, I think that's it.
So, excuse me. So then we're moving into Davos 3, and Davos is looking well. He's enjoying the heat in the dungeon, and he's feeling much better. And even Mel comes along and asks him, does he want to make some babies with her? And he says, no, thanks very much. I'll be grand here now with my porridge. And then we have a Florent show up. What's her name? Elise. Her uncle shows up for treason. It's totally treason. It is treason. What he did is treason.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry, you're done. My question is, Davos like he's having, his jailers are very nice. He's in a warm place. He's managed to get better. They're looking after him.
Yeah.
Is this Stannis's way of keeping him safe from Melisandre?
Yeah.
Is he keeping him safe? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that confirmed later?
No, but I don't think that Stannis would. Well, at this stage, anyway, in the story, that Stannis would want to do anything to harm Davos, because again, I do think that Davos has got something over Stannis, or some truth about Stannis's past, that gives him this elevated position, and that there was never going to be any. I don't think you can tell straight from the beginning of the chapter. There's never going to ever be any threat to Davos. He is being pretty well looked after.
I will say,
yeah,
it really he does annoy me in this chapter, and I have to keep reminding myself, Davos is Liam Cunningham, go to the Liam Cunningham side, you still love him, but it's really fucking annoying that he puts Stannis ahead of his children again in this chapter.
Yes. Continues constantly to defend Stannis. Yeah, yeah.
Really irritating.
There's some weird codependency, conspiratory stuff going on between Davos and Stannis. I'm certain of it. But yeah, there's a couple of things that happen here. Is Davos's encounter with Mel, and then later on in the chapter, there's a few things that happen there, and then later on we get Alistair Florent, who, as you say, it was pretty sort of straightforward. He's saying that he was loyal. You could argue that he was just completely misguided, but he did all of this off his own back without telling Stannis anything, so he deserves to be where he is.
Well, it's clear he's just trying to protect his house. You know, it's nothing to do with Stannis. It's barely anything to do with Shireen. And I think he's a very, very weak argument. And at the end of this chapter, it's just Davos coming back saying, no, what you did is treason. And, you deserve to be here. And I love where he's shocked that they don't have a privy. It's like,
yeah.
Do you know what prison is? So I suppose the most interesting thing in this chapter is the Mel Davos interaction, where she basically says there are two sides, R'hllor and the Great Other. It's fire and ice.
There's no grey. There's nothing in between. It's one or the other. Yeah.
And you're going to have to choose life or death at the end. And all I'm thinking is, Mel, you're going to end up having to pick the other side. I can just see it. I feel like she's going to have to go to the other side at some stage. I don't know why, but I just feel like that's where she's going. She's so she's so tribal in her mind. She's so like left versus right. This is it. I feel like that will be her sacrifice in the end.
But I mean, she does believe that there is this big war of the Lord of Light against the Lord of Dark. So, and she's talking about Azor Ahai being Stannis and leading the fight. I'm going to have to let the cat out in a second because she will not shut up until I do that. But I just wanted to ask, what do you think about this "waking the dragons from stone" quote? What is that? What does it mean?
So I think that is dragonglass. I think the dragons from stone, I think that's dragonglass. I think that's what they're going to have to... I mean, that's with the way they've gone in the show anyway, but I do think that's probably what they're going to have to do, is dig out dragonglass from Dragonstone so that they have weapons.
Right.
I mean, could there be eggs down there? Maybe.
Well, there's some heat, isn't there, coming from underground?
Yeah. It's not the only place in Westeros where there's heat coming from.
Catherine, I'm just going to grab a drink of water. I won't be a second.
No problem. So in Winterfell, we also have the hot springs and this heat underground. So it's definitely not the only place. I don't know. I kind of wonder. I'd be interested to know you guys in the comments in the chat. Are these tunnels from the north leading all the way down? That's what I'd be interested in finding out. I was just saying, do you think the tunnels that we'll hear about in John, and that have been alluded to in Bran chapters, will they lead all the way across Westeros, all of these tunnels? Like, will we have this underground network that could potentially...
I think there's a whole other story going on underground.
Yeah, yeah. Because
everywhere.
Because it made, when he was, talking about the heat and the walls, it really did make me think of Winterfell. Do you know, the heat that's under Winterfell? But yeah, I'm guessing it's dragonglass. It could be eggs. I mean, it could be at the very end of this series, someone will find a stash of eggs of some sort.
So born amid salt and smoke to wake the dragons from stone. I mean, the obvious thing is you just put those two words together and you get Dragonstone. So waking something from Dragonstone or within Dragonstone, and we know that there's heat underground. So if there's a dragon underneath Winterfell, why is there not a dragon underneath Dragonstone? And I think there's all sorts of stuff going on under. I think George R.R. Martin could do an entire new series just with what's going on underground.
Don't give him any hints. he'll stop what he's at.
Yeah. So he said the tunnels just go from the wall to Winterfell. Too much water in the neck to go that far south. Maybe.
Unless they have the Channel Tunnel.
Or maybe there are other things in the water that are not, other creatures. Who knows?
It could be that Greywater Watch is underground. It could be under the water.
Maybe that's why they can't find it. Yeah.
Could be. So, yeah, I mean, Mel's proposition to Davos, sexy as it is, I mean, did she really think that would work?
Well, she seems to derive some of her power, certainly to produce these shadow sons, as she calls them, from using men's life force, or what does she call it? She calls it life fire, men's life fire. So whatever it is she does to them while she's seducing them is somehow draining them of their life force.
Yeah.
So she doesn't, she's got no romantic intentions towards anybody. She's just using their energy in some weird twisted way for her magical advances.
I mean, don't we all?
Yeah. It happens.
I definitely drained the life out of my husband. Sick of me. Yeah, she is a bit exhausting. You don't I mean, if I was Stannis, let alone the sex, I'd be just worn out with her. She's a bit repetitive. But and also completely inaccurate because she doesn't give Davos a straight answer. He's like, well, you were so sure that we were going to win on the Blackwater. I gave my sons and we gave all these ships and men and how can we trust you? And then she tries to claim that she was kept out of proceedings, but
it would have been a different outcome.
Yeah, right. Okay, whatever, Mel. And how is Davos now Azor Ahai? How is that now Azor Ahai? The only, maybe she isn't seeing the future. Maybe she's seeing the past. And maybe if your theory is correct that the loyalty he owes Stannis has something to do with a baby that was delivered to Dragonstone, that if that baby is Dany, that is awaking a dragon from stone of sorts. So that could be it, right?
Yeah. There's a million ways you can interpret,
and a million characters that it can.
Yes, that it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything else. I just the story of Summerhall, just following on from the Laughing Tree, I thought was interesting, because just to keep Rhaegar in mind, and then of course nicely going into Jon then.
Yes.
And Dany,
so
he's actually mentioned with Dany as well. Yeah.
There's there's nothing as awkward as walking to the park with the dog and listening to the audio version of A Song of Ice and Fire, and listening to, again, I can't remember his name.
Roy Dotrice.
Thank you, Roy Dotrice, talking about the Lord's kiss. It's like, oh no, the audio version isn't great for that. But
yeah, and you forget how graphic it is until he's reading it.
Yeah, it's pretty graphic. But there's a couple of things that are in this chapter that that make me question other things that we've talked about for other characters, like the whole just the culture of the wildlings being very different to the customs and the culture of the South.
This is for Jon 3, yeah.
This is Jon 3, yeah. And that what features heavily in this chapter is Jon realizing that as much as you want to be loyal and maintain, you know, your loyalty and truth to your vows, it can slip away quite easily without it feeling as though you're definitely doing something wrong. In fact, he says, if we're doing something, if it's so wrong, why do the gods make it feel so good?
Yeah, right. Also,
yeah, but also Ygritte, when she's talking about, she's basically kind of saying, just because you don't mean to do something, it doesn't mean, basically intent means nothing if the thing that you do has the same result. And it just made me think, well, that could have an impact for lots of different things in the story, particularly when it's like Jon has this mindset of, this is what loyalty is, and this is what being honorable is, and this is what he sees from Ned. This is what the messages and the lessons that he's learned in his life are from Ned. So that's his kind of moral compass. Then he's made these attachments and vows to the Night's Watch. But basically he's also listening to Ygritte saying, it doesn't matter what you do or what you meant to do, because what difference does it make if what happens is the same thing? And you can come at something from a million different ways. It could be you were trying to be sneaky, it was an accidental thing, it was whatever. And it just made me think that there's a message there. There's a message there that she's trying to teach Jon that he's not taking on board at this stage. There's other little things like, why do you think he sent Ghost away? What was the what message does that send? I mean, he did say he couldn't take the risk of writing a note to them to say, look, I'm alive, but I'm not, you know, I've not turned my cloak, I'm just on like reconnaissance mission as per Corin Halfhand. He couldn't have taken the risk of doing that, or could he? I mean, you get the impression that he couldn't, but he wants to send Ghost away, thinking that if Ghost turns up at the wall, somehow magically the Black Brothers will go, oh, right, okay, this means that Jon must... I don't know what kind of message he thinks that was going to send, and why he did that. Why did he feel because it's all... If you think... it's just occurring to me now. Similar kind of thing happens with Robb, doesn't it? Where he meets a girl, falls in love, and then somehow pushes his direwolf away for whatever reason. And it's like, why? It's weird.
The direwolves are like definitely attached to your Starkness. So pushing them away allows you to be your own man.
Right.
So it's almost like as soon as he pushes Ghost away and he starts sleeping with Ygritte, basically tells her he loves her, you know,
Yeah.
all the things he loves about her. He says he feels less guilty. He's like, Ghost is a reminder of his darkness, I think. This chapter and the next chapter make me so sad for John, because I like John. I'm not a John hater. I really do like John. And it makes me so sad because I don't think John will ever be happy again. Like, I don't think John's destined to be a happy character. No. And I'm really afraid that we won't get POVs from John anymore after Dance.
Yeah.
And I don't see how we can get POVs from John. After, because we don't get them from Cat.
Yeah.
So if he is brought back, you know. But it makes me sad because every time I read this, he's so happy, and I'm like, Ygritte, just keep him in the cave. Just keep him in the cave. Don't let him go out. It is sad. AU is in the chat. Hi John, how's it going? So I feel bad for him, but this is definitely a love story, and
I had no choice. I was playing a part. Is this how it was for my father? So he's beginning to realize lots of things here, that maybe it isn't just that rigid, this is what loyalty means and this is how you fulfill your vows and your duty. It's not quite as easy as that. But then
he's also reminded of Arya as well with Ygritte.
Yeah.
Because he's so much love that he hasn't been allowed to give.
Yeah.
Except maybe to Arya and to Rob in a way. And the cat prevented him from giving to people.
Wasn't there supposed to be an incestuous kind of thing between Jon and Arya at one point?
Originally, I think that's the way it was supposed to go. But obviously it's not going to go that way now. But him and Ygritte are really going at it as well.
Like teenagers.
I'm surprised she's not pregnant.
Maybe. Well, I was going to ask that actually. Do you think she was trying to get pregnant?
Possibly.
I mean, she's already done the whole "you stole me, you definitely stole me, I'm now yours," and he's like, "Oh my god, you're so manipulative." But yeah, come on, man.
Like he says in the cave, he'd had her 100 times or more. I was like, God Almighty.
Yeah. I
mean, I know you're 16, mate, but slow down. She could have been trying to get pregnant. I'm still interested in what the kiss by fire, if there's any significance in that. The look and the kiss by fire, because or if George is just trying to overcorrect the prejudice that us redheaded folk feel in our world.
Maybe.
But it's a sweet chapter, apart from the mention of cannibals and the fact that he's lying to the wildlings and adding numbers where they aren't in the Night's Watch. I don't know why he needs to do that at this stage. I mean,
it's funny because the
300 isn't going to make a difference.
No, I know. The Magnar comes across as really quite savage, but like demanding, and you know he comes across as a bit of a scary character. But then later on, much later on in the story, he's a bit of a hero, isn't he?
Yeah.
So it's just, I just thought it was funny the way that people are introduced. Then just talking about the cave bit without the specific, like, you know, graphic details. Thanks, Roy Dotrice.
Yeah.
But she talks again about the wolves of Winterfell fighting back Gorn and Gendel, and that everyone thought that they'd lost their lives in this fight, but he vanished, he disappeared, and this is like Gendel's children's children, and they're crying because they're lost. So we hear this story about the tunnels, and as Sonny Frank says, there's definitely, we know there are some tunnels constructed that run from north of the wall to Winterfell. Yeah, I think there's, but I'm just going to say, I think there's definitely more to that. I think there's definitely something down there. And the way that Ygritte said, let's just go and join up with them. And it's like, I wonder if you could have actually done that.
Yeah.
You know, if you could have joined a different community that's like deep underground. The thing that I got out of this encounter was when they were talking about, when Jon was saying who was your first, and like obviously not a maiden, and he was kind of ribbing her and saying, oh, it wasn't such and such a body, then I can't remember, and she was like, oh no, we don't do that, we don't sleep with each other if we're in the same clan. And it's kind of right. It's like, right, okay, I want to talk to Kat about this because this is quite interesting. We're hearing here from the wildlings that incest is an absolute no-no. And not only are we talking in a like familial, you know, brother sister like Jaime kind of incest, but we're extending the parameters of that way beyond like blood relations to your pack. And with horror and disgust is like the reaction from Ygritte. So it's an ingrained cultural thing with them. And she also says, so, and there's a practical reason for them doing this, an anthropological practical reason for them doing it, which is to strengthen the stock of the different clans in the north. So that makes complete sense why they do that. But it's just coming back to, for the wildlings, incest on a much wider spectrum is seen as a very bad thing, and the product of the children, the product of those couplings are offensive to God, and that the children are born weak and like monsters. So that immediately it's like, right, okay, so who do we know in the story that's potentially born of incest? So I'm not talking about bastards here. I'm talking about incestuous relationships, but maybe with a wider parameter that Ygritte is alluding to or trying to explain from her cultural perspective. So you've got Joff, who's obviously the monster. You know, she says sometimes these children are weak, but also sometimes they can be monsters. So you've got Joff. You've also obviously got Sweet Robin, which immediately just made me think, oh my God, you know, when we were talking a few weeks ago about what is it that Hoster is so apologetic for, and so
sorry, Sweet Robin is a product of incest.
Well, what I'm saying is,
okay,
yeah, from Ygritte's point of view, she's saying if you sleep, so incest, we know incest as in the story of Westeros is, you know, a relationships between brothers and sisters, family members. What Ygritte is saying is it's wider than that. So there's two things to consider here. I'm saying, if you think about it as children that are products of incest are weak and sometimes monsters, well, we've already got the example of Joff. So who's the weak product of incest in the story? Potentially Robert, Aaron, Sweet Robin, which then, and it just that conversation that we had a few weeks ago of like, what is it that Hoster is so horribly like, I'm so sorry and forgive me. What is it that he's pleading for forgiveness for? And it seems to be that he's kind of pleading for forgiveness from Lysa. And so what I'm throwing in there is,
wow,
was there an incestuous thing going on between Hoster and Lysa?
Wow, I need to sit up. Wow.
And so, that's why I'm just wondering why it is that he's so, like, he's on his deathbed and it's that he just wants forgiveness for this horrible thing, and he's talking about Tansy.
It would explain why she's quite unhinged.
Yeah.
Also, we don't have, I don't know, maybe among the Targaryens, we don't have necessarily that much familial abuse in the story. and it's very common in our own world. Very common. So
unfortunately,
we have pedophilia. I mean, we'll have it in the Arya chapter. We'll have it in the Sansa chapter. So yeah, I mean, that would be a massive twist. I assumed he was saying that because of the little finger, that he's making her have an abortion.
Well, you could, in the same theory context, if you like, could say, well, hang on a minute, what Ygritte's talking about here is a wider concept than father and daughter. What she's saying is clansmen.
Yeah.
So could we consider Peter Baelish, Littlefinger, when they were all growing up as children, would he have been considered a clansman? And him getting together with Lysa, could that have produced this weak child of incest? Would the wildlings, would Ygritte look at that situation and say, oh, that's revolting because they're actually, you know, they're from the same clan, they grew up together as children?
Well, here's the question. This is going way out there. Ion, how are you? I hope you bought your tinfoil hat. Littlefinger. Why is Littlefinger around Riverrun in the first place?
Well, wasn't there there was some sort of deal between his father and Hoster for he did Hoster a massive favor, and Hoster was like, okay, I'll you know, I think he had designs for his son to be more, because they come, you know, it's a tiny little holding that he's got, isn't it? So I think Peter's father was ambitious for him. I don't know, I can't remember the details of it, but there was
is there a chance that Hoster is Littlefinger's father of some, you know, maybe I don't know. But
there, I think what we can say is there's, just from this conversation and the horror that Ygritte has about, oh my God, really? No, he's from the same clan. And to John, that's confusing, because it's like, well, you're not related. And it's like, no, you don't understand. We're from the same clan. We don't do that. That's like disgusting up here. And it's like, if you apply the same rules to this weird shit that's going on with how they were all growing up together and wards and, you know, like adopting children and you know, and somehow this scenario of Littlefinger and Lysa being considered clans people, you know, within the same sort of group setting, then that would produce this weak child.
Well, and you let that play out over centuries, and you end up with a World War I situation.
Yeah.
You know, you end up with like all these houses. Eventually, they end up hating one another, and you've got all these weak bloodlines. Like that's one of the causes of World War I. But also, it does a very important thing, that conversation about incest vindicates Stannis from the previous chapter, who, you know, reading that, you're like, why doesn't he just give up? But it's so wrong for him that Joffrey and Tommen and what's the other one's name? The little one,
Marcella and Tommen.
That they're products of incest, and that the idea that Shireen, just the suggestion that his daughter should be married into incest is just, and Davos is shocked by it as well. So it does, because the wildlings, and I would talk about this before, my favorite culture so far, they're the ones I want to hang out with. I'll drink goat milk, whatever they're drinking, goat brandy, whatever. They're definitely, and I think, you know, even in our own world, the more science looks into tribal culture and knowledge, the more we can actually gain from that, you know, like stuff about like micro gut bacteria, all that kind of thing. They're now looking into the way tribes deal with it. But even like, you know, one of the most important anthropological evolutions took place because of the invention of the bicycle, because people no longer married within their village. They started moving from village to village.
Right.
And they could court, and they could actually start getting off with people from outside their clan, if you like. There's a lot of value to that. Mixing up the gene pool is really important. and you know, people who are looking at the wildlings as backward are they're going to get, I think they're going to get a big surprise when the wildlings, I feel a lot of the wildlings will end up in the north taking over abandoned or deserted holds in the north at the end of this.
Yeah.
And I think they'll be well able for it. They might create a better culture.
I think they'll, I think we should go on holiday. We'll go visit them at like Whitetree or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think there's something, the more you think about it, it's like, well, he lost his wife, Hoster and Lysa. He lost his wife. She seemed to be very like sexually active or interested in that. So, you know, from quite a young age. She seemed to be having these pregnancies all the time, that just, she's miscarrying constantly. And then she ended up marrying somebody that was kind of around her father's age anyway. It's just like, there's a possibility, potential there, I think, that there's some weird incest shit that was going on. Why was Hoster pleading for forgiveness on his deathbed? To me, that means you've done some serious shit in your life that, you know, is the only thing that you kind of want to get off your chest and confess before you fall off your perch. It's just like,
also,
there's just something
she never sees
about
him
it.
again. The suggestion is she has never seen him.
Yeah,
she left. No, I think that makes total sense. Yeah, because we haven't had an incident of it in the book, and it is overdue. Actually, we have 1,000 characters so far. I don't know. I feel like there might be one instance of it, but it's very common. It is very common. You know, it's not like it would be. It would make sense for sure. Yeah. And did that just occur to you reading this chapter?
It was just the whole don't sleep with clansmen, which made me think. But it was the bit where she says that the gods are offended and that children born of incest are born weak and sometimes monsters. And it's like, oh, right, yeah, like Joffrey. Well, who's the weak one then? And it's like just going, like, kind of backtracking to that whole incest is bad. This is what could happen. Have we seen anything that you could, like, you know, join the dots and kind of match things up within the story? And it's like, well, there is Sweet Robin, and, you know, if you think about, I think there might be something freaky that was going on at Riverrun at some point, and I'm fascinated to find out what it is that Hoster is desperate for forgiveness for.
Also, Lysa is so separated from Edmure and Cat, which is what would happen in that situation as well. So that's John. And
just one other thing about John's chapter is when Ygritte talks about Craster. So she talks about Craster's father being a crow and his mother being a wildling from Whitetree. So Craster's father was a man of the Night's Watch, but she also talks about Craster. She kind of brushes over it, but says that Craster bears a heavy curse. And it's like, why would, I mean, he's doing some horrendous things, Craster, but it's not, I mean, why, what is this, what's this curse? Why would he have to bear a heavy curse? Why would it be, because he's the baby born of a wildling and a crow? It's just made me kind of raise an eyebrow of like, what is this heavy curse that Craster bears? Because I mean, it could be something to do with his trade off with the baby boys that we don't know about yet in the story.
But or he could also be of incest as well.
It could, yeah.
I mean, if the crow, you know, if the crow and the wildling were both Starks, for instance.
I think there's some weird stuff going on here. That's
Ion calls it the Riverrun sex cult.
Maybe. Yeah.
There is something weird. I think that's a really interesting thing with Hoster. There's something, Definitely.
Maybe I've been just reading too much about. We heard about that Nick, I don't know if you ever watched Smallville, but the actress from Smallville who played Chloe, involved in this like weird Hollywood sex cult. That, I mean, I've been kind of reading a bit about that in the last couple of weeks, and it's like, yeah, so maybe I'm just projecting this into some kind of like river run sex cult with Hosterby in the vanguard.
But no, I mean, like, there is like, I mean, it wouldn't be at all surprising, you know. I mean, it's
human beings are weird,
really weird. Yeah,
this is why I prefer Jack Russell's.
yeah.
That was it really for John.
For John, yeah. So we're kind of moving away from sex now. We'll be back to it. But
well, apart from the fact that Dany, I did find it funny that Dany's like flashing her boobs in the next chapter, you know, in a toque and everything, in the traditional dress, after we've had John getting fruity with Ygritte in the cave.
Yeah.
So it's all a bit racy.
But as we said, definitely one of my favorite Dany chapters of the entire series. She is a bit scary, very comfortable with the old violence. And I want to start by showing you guys this print, which I coincidentally got in Japan this week. But in this chapter, she describes the dragonfire kind of looping in when he, and I just want to show you my print.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, so I thought, this kind of reminds me of the dark fire looping in and all that kind of thing. So
it's the what you call it, the Aurora Borealis, whatever it is, the dragon eating its tail.
Yeah, it's kind of shimmery as well, but I don't think you can see the shimmer.
And ice
kind
and
of
fire.
A golden color. But
like
so I have to find somewhere in here for it. But so Dany, we finally get this payoff that she has been pretending not to understand High Valyrian so she can get this deal. So she has agreed to she finally gets them to give her all of the Unsullied, including the trainees. And this is Dany 3, by the way. And they come back and Jorah and everybody's a bit worried about this, but she's got the plan. She knows what she's going to do. She keeps telling herself to be fearless, and she's going to take the trident like Rhaegar didn't. She's going to take the trident. She
even dreams about it, doesn't she? That she is Rhaegar, and it's kind of like she wants to prove to herself that she's better than Rhaegar. Yeah.
And I loved the list of stuff that was bringing in. They were bringing in, all the valuables that they're going to pay these guys with. My favorite, the maggot stuffed olives.
Priceless.
I love the way he just slips in these like maggot stuffed olives.
Delicacy.
God.
You've just been somewhere this week that's a completely different culture from what you used to. And I always feel when we have these Dany chapters that there's this feeling of the culture is so different, especially if we've just been up in the north with, in John's chapter, or some horrific stuff that's going on with Sansa or whatever. And then we get this different world where there's so many peculiar little customs over in ASOS, and especially with the very, like, I suppose the equivalent of the highborn and the upper classes, where they kind of like they do this exaggerated crying as like, oh no, please, you mustn't, and it's all this like everything's kind of hammed up. But they also seem to, like, Dany feels that she has to travel around with an entourage because everybody else does. They all sort of travel with this, like, here's my group of people. It's not just a safety and security thing. It's almost like let me show you my entourage. It's just so weird. And the whole thing about Astapor being built on brick and blood, and the net not the next chapter, which is a Sansa chapter, but the Arya chapter, I did think that the imagery of the disobedient slaves with like dying tied up with like flies and everything just seemed very like mirrored the crow cages at the Stony Sept in Arya's chapter. And it's like, oh, there's some real themes again that are kind of threading into each other in the way these chapters have been crafted together as a kind of in a running order.
I will say we were in a restaurant in Japan that sold offal. I'll show it in the video when I do my Japan videos this week. I might send you the menu. One of the things on the menu was throat cartilage. And I was like,
throat cartilage?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't even know why.
Wow.
I don't even know. I don't even know.
How could you just can't make that sound appetizing at all, can you?
It and it looked,
was it like a soup or?
It looked like, no, it looked like cartilage. Like it looked like white stuff. And they had pictures of it in case you wanted to point, you know. God. But they had like intestine and all this, the lower intestine, that like is all I'll send you a picture. You can have a look. It's actually the maggot stuffed olives. I would eat them over anything on this menu when you see the menu.
Is it like offal you like?
Yeah, and it was like you get this hot stone and there's a little chimney and you can. We looked at the menu, we're like, we'll just have beer.
Yeah.
We're all right. We're kind of full. So
throat cartilage, Jesus.
Yeah, so gross. And that I don't know, the lung was on it and all this kind of thing as well. God. So excuse me. The thing I found very interesting, and I had to look this up to be sure. Valar Morghulis is mentioned in this chapter, and Dany is the first person in the entire series to translate that.
Yes, she is. You're right. Yeah.
And it means all men must die, obviously. But interestingly, it's Missandei Dany interaction where we get that translation from. And I wonder, is there a meaning in that? Because she isn't shocked by because it's not the violence that Drogo is inflicting. But the way she describes the eyes melting down his face and stuff is kind of gross.
Yeah.
But the violence she inflicts herself with the whip, you know, on his face.
Yeah.
And there's something like there's some sort of line that's like she didn't take a moment to see it, but she does see it. She does give us a bit of a description. And it's like, wow, you're not at all disturbed by what you've just done there.
No.
There is a darkness to Dany, and I just wonder, the all men must die part, is that important that it came from Dany?
Was it? So did Missandei say Valar Morghulis and
yes,
Dany translated it? Okay.
Yes.
Because there are theories that like the waif is Missandei, or there's like, there's some kind of connection between the waif and Missandei, and that she's not really, how could she possibly be 9 years old when she knows like all these languages and
has 3 brothers who are unsullied.
Yeah, I'd see again. This is a bit where I was like, I knew, obviously they've completely changed the direction of this in the TV show because they wanted to get the actress who was playing Missandei in some kind of romantic situation. And she's obviously aged up a bit in the books. Missandei's like 8 or 9 years old. She is a child. Or is she? I don't know. It's like the waif, it's those 2 characters where you can't quite get a grip on how old they are, but they seem to be very knowledgeable and learned. But same here. I totally forgot that it was. I knew that I was like, well, I don't think it's I think she's got a brother, but I didn't realize she had 3 unsullied.
She says Valar Morghulis because she suggests to Dany that because Dany is worried that if she takes the unsullied and when they're finished with when they've won the war for her, then what does she do with them? And then she worries, well, what if I try and sell them and someone uses them against me?
Yeah.
And, you know, Missandei's like, yeah, that could happen. They'll obey whoever owns them. That could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, the best thing to do would be to order them to fall on their own swords. And Dany says, will they do that? And then she says, Valor Morghulis. And there's a lot in this chapter. I feel like this is a chapter, because it's so good, the way she doesn't tell anybody what she's going to do. It's also,
and Barristan is losing his mind, isn't he? About you're selling them a what? You're prepared also, to give up a what?
That description of Drogon and this whole chapter is amazing. But then it's so Dany to do something amazing and then do something that's so stupid and detrimental and obviously going to end in catastrophe, which is what she does within like 2 breaths in this chapter, which is to win the Unsullied and, you know, get everything, keep everything, and then order them to kill every master and everybody, you know, that's upper class in the city. And it's
it reminds me again of what Ygritte said about it doesn't, and you could apply this to anything that's happened in history, any significant event or battle that's happened in history, is you don't necessarily know the details exactly of what the intent was, what exactly was the reason, really the true reality of what the intention of those particular actions were. What you remember is the result, you remember the outcome, or you remember the difference it made, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. And I think this is an example of this in this chapter. You're not necessarily you're just going to remember that she's won her first battle. She is now the breaker of chains. This is a momentous historic occasion, and I really felt this when I was reading this chapter the first time. There was this real kind of like, whoa, you know, yes, you get that dramatic payoff, but there's also that feeling of, okay, this is going to be quite a significant character, and
there's fallout here. There's fallout that we're going to see, that we already see with the previewed Barristan chapter from Winds. But I feel like this is a chapter that we should flag and dog ear and bookmark, because I think we're going to come back to this a lot as we go into Winds, because there's a lot here, and I think you're totally right about Missandei. There's something not quite right with this girl. I don't like. She has 3 brothers in the Unsullied, and she has no problem. And I know these people are brainwashed. I know she's 9, but comparing her to Arya, which I know it's very hard to do because she's a slave, but she's obviously very intelligent.
Yeah.
For her to instantly say to Dany, "Well, just order them to fall on their sword." But you have 3 brothers there. That's interesting. Interesting that you can...
Quite dark, isn't it?
Very dark. And it's and you know, she realizes that Dany is when she realizes that Dany can speak High Valyrian, she is really shocked. And I think it strikes me as one of the few times, and maybe the last time, we'll see Missandei shocked. Because nothing really gets past her. I feel. But I feel there's something in Dany that there's too much Aries in Dany, I feel, and not enough Rhaegar, perhaps. But it's a massive...
it's that doesn't matter how you do it. I just want the end result. But again, I don't, she thinks of the implications of things when she's thinking about what about the Unsullied and when I don't need them anymore. And she's definitely, I remember having conversations with Stuart when I was first reading the books, and and talking about Dany, and his interpretation of the Dany storyline is, oh, Dany's just kind of kicking around in ASOS because she's learning to rule, she's learning to be a queen, so it's almost like ASOS is a training ground for her before she comes to Westeros. And it's like, yeah, I don't know, I'm not entirely sure that Dany knows what she's doing at all. I think she just goes with a how she feels at the time and what she wants the result to be. And sometimes she goes about things in a fair way where she wants to be. She talks to Jorah in this chapter about justice and what it should be like to be a king, and would a king do this and would a king do that, and about protecting their people. So it's kind of like she wants to be this loyal and just ruler, but this Targaryen-ness takes over in her, and
it's not even that much. Like, a Targaryen will ask you to bend the knee before he just decides, or she just decides to instantly put you and all your family to death. It's so jarring when she just goes, just kill everybody, don't blah blah. It's like, oh my god, what? And like, Jorah and Barristan must have been like, what the like, if they bring her to Westeros, is that what she's going to do? Is she going to like just kill any houses that she doesn't like? It feels like, that's, and that seems.
And she's not. I mean, she's not being very collaborative with her council here. She's asking them to tell her a lot and give her a lot of guidance, but she's just going ahead and not giving them any kind of heads up about what they're walking into here. And it's like, what's the benefit of doing this? Not unless you completely don't trust them, which you shouldn't. But she doesn't seem to be coming across, she seems to be like, oh, I need these people around me. But at the same time, I don't trust them enough to tell them what my plans are. Or is it just she completely didn't know what she was doing and it just occurred to her?
I think that's it. I don't think
There's no plan.
I think when she looked at that whip and how savage the whip was, and like the description of it is horrific. The 9 tails and the claws, it is horrific. And when she realizes that this has been used, and when she starts thinking about all the babies, and I think it's then she just goes, no, they're not going to be able to do this anymore. Somebody needs to take out their revenge on these guys.
I've got to have a look at. Oh, hi Meridian.
Oh, hi Meridian.
And Iron Throne and emojis just make me laugh. There's not enough emojis in the world.
Can I just get a quick poll in the audience? Do we trust Missandei? Because I know Clare and me definitely don't trust her. Not show Missandei now, book Missandei. Do you trust Missandei? I don't trust her at all. And it is funny going from this chapter into the Dany chapter, because this is so anti-slavery, and Dany's like, oh, everybody's free in Westeros, and yet she has her own slaves, I mean, it's a bit awkward.
But again, that could be you doing something for a good reason, but have you thought about the outcome at all? Well, probably not, because you're fueled by I am the blood of the dragon, and also you are a Targaryen, so you're a bit sometimes.
Well, what will she think when she comes to Westeros and she realizes that, men like Dantas are used as footstools?
Yeah,
literally. It's not.
Yeah,
it's not that great. Meridian says Dany does not think, and she doesn't trust Missandei. Ian does trust Missandei. So I don't, but we'll see. And I don't think she's 9.
No, I think there's something a bit odd about Missandei, but I don't know whether I trust her or not yet. We need to talk about Quaithe in this chapter.
Yes, of course. Gosh, I nearly forgot. Yes, of course, Quaithe. Yeah.
So we have an encounter where Quaithe appears again. And the first thing that she's saying is they all sleep, even dragons must sleep. So that's like, what the hell does that mean? What does she mean by they all sleep? Because that kind of reminds me of like sleeping dragons or sleeping giants. Even dragons must sleep. So I'm just trying to figure out what that means. But then we get the infamous, to to go north, you must go south. To reach the west, you must go east. So basically what's mentioned here is go back, go north, go to Westeros, and pass beneath the shadow. I think is the shadow tower. Is going under the wall, under the shadow tower. So go back, go north, go back, go to Westeros, go north, and go shadow tower. And I know we get her going up to the north in the TV show, and she goes beyond the wall. So I think when there's rather than go, I don't know. I'm just trying to make sense of my notes here. So it's like when Quaithe is saying to go forward, you must go back. That's my biggest question. I mean, go west, you must go east. I understand all of that. The big question for me, because I'm convinced that the shadow is the shadow tower, is when she says to go forward, you must go back. Excuse me, back to where?
I think is it Illyrio?
Back to Pentos, back to Bravos, where she went, back to possibly Dragonstone or potentially Storm's End, where she could have been. But where? Go back. If you say to somebody go back, that could be go back to the place of your birth. Go back.
It's Pentos, Dorne, Dragonstone. It depends on what we get from Fagon, right? If he is Fagon.
Yeah.
Aegon.
Meridian saying the waif, anyone. Yeah, we did mention that before, actually. Meridian, we were saying that there's lots of theories that Missandei and there's parallels between Missandei and the waif in terms of they don't seem to be the same age, and they are very knowledgeable about different languages and cultures. So could they be the same person?
Sunny says Missandei can't be 9 because she's too wise, therefore she has her own agenda. Yeah, I don't see. Ian says she's a prodigy. She's the Stephen Hawking of ASOS. I'm pretty sure Stephen Hawking couldn't even speak 9 languages or whatever.
Do you think that she's going to be one of the betrayals?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, okay. Definitely. Yeah, yeah. I think.
She's in the book. She's burrowing herself right in there as the most trusted, isn't she? She's in every situation. She's glued to Dany's side in the books.
I think they're going to change it in the show. I think.
Well, they've changed so much about Missandei already. She's completely.
I feel like that she's nothing in the show at this stage, but I do. Yeah, I mean, we're definitely not getting the last book before the show. That's been confirmed.
Oh. Meridian saying go back in time could be knowledge, like go back and find.
Could be.
There's something missing there, isn't there? Go back. But why, if that's the case, stop being so bloody cryptic. If there's supposed to be some knowledge that she, again, it's the frustration.
Does your crib smell of onions? It's to go back to the Dothraki. That could be it, Sonny. Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested to see how she's going to bring all these groups together. I'm still, when we finally do get wins, I mean, it's a really difficult one for me. If it's the Damp Hair or the Barristan chapter, I love the most from the ones that have been released. The Barristan chapter is fantastic. But I'm like, there's so much about Dany. She takes counsel well sometimes, but in this chapter, I can understand why she doesn't tell them. I think it's better she doesn't tell them. But then to suddenly go to that devastating decision.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, what are you thinking? This isn't the way to end slavery. If anything, this is a way to ensure that people are going to want to continue it.
Yeah.
And also, just because you kill the masters doesn't mean you kill the idea. I mean, slaves they don't necessarily disagree with slavery if
this
they're now the ones in charge.
It's you can't just check. It's a massive amount of change to expect to happen just in one act like that.
It's a cultural thing. Like, I mean, you're gonna have to, you're gonna have to change the entire
centuries and centuries of being embedded. Yeah, you don't change things like that.
And look, I mean, even in our own world, look at, what was it, 150, 200 years in North America and the United States, they had slavery, and the ramifications of that are still there to this day. They didn't even kill all the masters, like they did. Like, it's you just don't go in, and it's just taking out everybody. It's just so ruthless.
It's naive, but it is a rollicking good chapter.
Yeah, and the Quaithe stuff, she does need to go back. She does need to go back, and maybe she needs to go back and find the beggar queen in her again, and to maybe ground herself a little bit more and see sense. Because definitely, if anything about Rhaegar, he seems to have been somebody that looked outside of his own self. He looked outside of his own ego and position for the bigger picture. He seems to have been a bigger picture kind of guy from the bits that we have of him. But yeah, so that's Dany. Meridian says slavery just changed hands. Revenge is sweet. Yeah. It's also, revenge is sweet, but it's not a way to rule, for sure. And it's her first biggest mistake, but it's gonna have the most long lasting effects. All right, so we're into Sansa 3. Oh god, Sansa 3.
You've got two things in this chapter. You've got the wedding and then you've got the bedding. That's basically what's happening in this chapter. So the wedding part is, I've got very little on this really. It's interesting that there's just this sense of betrayal yet again that Sansa must be feeling, that all of the Tyrells seem to be just going like that. No, we don't. We did nothing to do with us. We do, and they're like fading into the background. The number 1,000, I have to mention, comes up in this chapter where she talks about tears turning from 100 to 1,000. The wedding ceremony itself, I know there's the whole thing about the cloak here, and she's just being a petulant child. I have to say that I don't think this is necessarily at the end for Sansa, and I'm not a Sansan proponent, but I can really see why people would go in this direction. She's just about to get married and she's thinking about the Hound being not as ugly as Tyrion, which is, and then later on in the bedding part of the chapter, she talks about trying to find his beauty and like that. And it's, so I can totally see, if you were on the Sansan train, that this would be a chapter where you'd lock it down as like, this is evidence of, this is definitely, there's something there.
I agree, and I feel like I completely forgot that Tyrion had given her an option here. He'd given her an out. He said, "You can still marry Lancel. You don't have to marry me." And she chooses Tyrion.
Yeah.
And
I'd forgotten that he'd said we can walk away from this. Yeah,
and I feel like, because it happened so quickly, and I feel like if Sandor had been there, he would have said, "Go with Tyrion." Like, it's almost as if, and she makes the right choice, obviously. But just everything about the opening of this chapter, the dress is, the cut is almost down to her V, and it's lace, like it's very sexy wedding dress. And she says that it's not a dress for a girl, it's a dress for a woman. And she thinks about losing her virginity. And in fairness to her, she really does, as heartbreaking as it is for her to have lost the dream life with Willis and all that kind of thing, she really does, you know, she womans up. She, you know, she gets you know, the dress off, or she, you know, she she's willing to accept it.
If someone's going to take one for the team, it's going to be Sansa.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the wedding, like, she doesn't want to kneel down at the wedding, and I think even the fact that she does in the end, I think it shows a remarkable strength of character for her. That, and it is, I'm so glad that we got it from her point of view and not Tyrion's.
Yeah.
Because I would have hated to have read Tyrion tugging at her dress, and the shame and the embarrassment of that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, just seeing it from Sansa's point of view is enough. And I mean, the fact that then he has to stand on Dantas and Cersei is laughing, and it's all so humiliating. And the wedding scene then itself, and Joffrey and the dancing and all that kind of thing. But the thing that really disturbs me about this is that when, you know, Tyrion is naked with her, and she's trying to find the beauty, and he says, you know, do you ever see yourself being able to sleep with me? We don't have to consummate it now, blah, blah, blah. But the entire time, he has a raging boner. And
and he says to her, you're a child, but I want you.
Yes, so what is he turned on by here? Is it like the fact that she's so beautiful? I mean, we've been led to believe that she might be the most beautiful woman in King's Landing, even more beautiful than Marjorie potentially. Is it the fact, is he turned on by women who find him unattractive?
Possibly, yeah, maybe.
Or is it the fear of it? Like is it that she's afraid of him? And it made the reason why I'm thinking this is because of the way he describes Tysha and her house, and the sigil, and then he describes, you know, when they got married, they had the only witnesses they had with the septon was the pigs, and then they ate one of the pigs at the wedding feast. I'm like, there's something not adding up about this wedding. And we talked about this before, his memory of this marriage, and how they had habits and routines.
Yeah.
How long does it take to roast a pig?
Yeah.
Like, there's something, I don't know, there's something he's either willfully misremembering, or a narrative he's invented for himself, that he actually did know that maybe she was never that attracted to him, and he's kind of built this thing in his head.
Yeah.
Because this weird interaction with Sansa made me disbelieve everything he's been saying about Tysha, or remembering about Tysha. It's all very weird, and I don't trust Tyrion, but that's just me.
I mean, that's plausible. That's definitely plausible. I mean, maybe I mean, she's definitely exuding pity, isn't she? So maybe it's not just that I don't find you attractive, but I feel really sorry for you. It's an emotion. It might.
Oh,
you
know, did you lose me, or did I lose you?
It's like a softer emotion, I guess, than just like, I'm repulsed by the sight of you. It's more like, oh my God, I actually feel sorry for you. Maybe that's something that kind of that he's drawn to. Who knows?
I do feel sorry for him, because he's so exposed in that moment, and he can't control, I guess, his attraction to her.
Meridian saying he's self-loathing, and I think he makes his own reality. I think you could be right there. Yeah.
It's very psychologically complex, and apart from the wedding, this is the only part of this. The bedding is where I probably would have liked to have seen Tyrion's point of view. Actually, I would have liked to have seen it switch then, because I think we may have got more insight into his character. I don't necessarily think we learn anything from Sansa in that bedding scene, if you know what I mean. She reacts as I expect Sansa to react. But Tyrion, there's something going on. There's something, I don't know, there's something not quite right about it. And just based off our Taisha conversation the last time when he was in the coma, I'm starting to look out for things, red flags with that. The bedding, obviously, the ceremony that they have with the bedding, horrific.
Yeah.
In fact, it surprises me that Joffrey doesn't try and claim the Lord's right, or what do they call it? Do you know?
Yeah, the first night or something.
Yeah.
First night rights or something.
Yeah. It's surprising, but obviously he couldn't because King's Landing. But this is obviously foreshadowing the Red Wedding as well.
Yeah,
the bedding scene there. That'll be our next bedding scene. And again, you know, this one ends in peace, but that one won't. I think.
I mean, I suppose just politically, there's like what this marriage means right now. Politically, what this marriage means. Like, Tyrion's already had kind of like, oh, well, yeah, okay, the North, Winterfell. I hadn't considered that. We know that he's thought about it. We know that Sansa knows that she's the first thing that she thought of was my claim, my claim. That's what they're after. They want my claim. But just in my notes, the question is, what does this non-consummated marriage mean? What does it mean symbolically, and what does it mean in practice for the future? So they've not and never have consummated this marriage. I don't know whether that's means anything in Westeros where you can just kind of like annul. I mean, we've had an annulment of marriage has been mentioned in this story before. But anyway, so I don't know if that marriage can effectively be dissolved later on in the future.
It's not legal unless they consummate it.
So they're not necessarily bound to each other in the future. I know that there's a lot of people that think that eventually Tyrion and Sansa will somehow get together again, or that he will, you know, look after. I think LaDonna's theory was that the Hound would die, but that Sansa would have his children, and that Tyrion would end up like bringing up her children with the Hound, and it was all like, that's quite complicated. But well,
Tywin doesn't care if he's sleeping with her. His only instruction to Tyrion is consummate it, and then I don't care. Put a baby in her belly in a year from now, or whenever. Just consummate it.
Yeah.
So it's not. I like that. It's. It wouldn't have been legal in a Catholic marriage. It had to be consummated. But
because later on down the line, later on in the story, in the book story, Littlefinger is trying to marry her off, and it's like, well, she is already married to Tyrion. But if it's not, if it doesn't really mean anything, if it's not really legal, I just wondered, like, you know, why that happened and what it means for the future, I guess.
Sonny actually asks a good question. How did Tyrion get out of his first marriage? I guess he's still legally married.
Yeah.
So, I mean, technically, bigamy isn't illegal in Westeros because the Targaryens did practice bigamy. So technically, you can have more than one spouse.
Well, if you're a Targaryen, it's the norm. So there you go. Tyrion's a Targaryen for sure.
Confirmed. It's a good question, Sonny. I'd say he's still legally married. Taisha is still his wife. So yeah, unless there's a law again, and there doesn't seem to be any court here, so there doesn't seem to be a justice system. It's just what the king says goes. Unless a king comes along later and annuls that marriage, or I don't know, it seems like people will just forget and just move on. But I don't know if George will. It may be important later. It may be that Tyrion does have some claim to Winterfell.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Iron Throne, didn't Tywin make the Septon nullify it or something? I think Tywin had some sort of involvement in just kind of sweeping it to one side.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, Barbara. Oh, thanks, hi, Barbara.
Hi, Barbara.
Tywin had the first marriage annulled by the Septon that married them.
Okay. Thank you.
He probably murdered the Septon as well.
Well, that brings up a good question. Does it have to be the Septon that married them, or can any Septon annul a marriage? Because the Septon that marries Tyrion and Sansa is dead now.
Yes.
So I don't know if that makes a difference. Probably doesn't. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen there. I would be interested to see them together again.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what
scheming.
Yeah, scheming, definitely.
I think that politically they'd be a very good match for one another. They'd also make very interesting enemies if it ever came to that.
I would be interested to see if they ever run into each other again.
Sonny says, I didn't think the regular Septons could do that. I thought it was just the High Septon. I'll have to have a reread. Well, the High Septon definitely married Tyrion and Sansa, but ordinary Septons, I don't know. But I guess they, it's like you have to go to the Pope through your bishop or whatever if you want an annulment. So that's it for Sansa and Tyrion's raging manhood. And that line, every part of him was crooked.
Yeah.
Apart from that.
Yeah.
And to go from Tyrion's helmet to Gendry's helmet. One of my favorite, probably my favorite line of this week.
Polishing his helmet and something with his hammer.
He's stupid. He loves polishing his helmet. So the prostitute asks what's wrong with Gendry because he doesn't want to sleep with her. And Arya said, oh, he's just stupid. He likes polishing his helmet and hammering his sword.
Yeah. But what is wrong with Gendry? What was his issue in this chapter?
I think Gendry is having a little bit of a Jon Snow moment and doesn't want to father bastards.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Because he comes back then after. Sorry, we should introduce this properly. Arya 5. We end up with the Brotherhood and Arya at the Peach, which is a brothel, and
the Stony Sept, which was where there was a famous battle where Ned fought the battle, and Robert sounds like he was a bit of a coward and just hid and fathered loads of bastards yet again.
How many times did you say Connington at the start of this chapter? I was like, okay, we know he's going to be important. Yeah. So, before we get to the brothel, which is interesting in and of itself, because I feel like this chapter has a lot to do with the Mercy chapter that we'll see later. We see Northmen being trapped, and these Northmen are Karstarks that were sent out to look for Jaime and ended up raping and pillaging, according to their captors. And Arya sneaks some water to the prisoners, and she sees them as part of her pack. They're part of the North, they're part of her, and it just made me think, wow, she's way more in tune with how you should be behaving as a northerner at this time than her brother was when he took Karstark's head, than Kat was when she let Jaime go. Arya is definitely a northerner. And I guess before we move on to the Peach, is there anything you have to say about her experience there?
That we the huntsman is referenced several times in this chapter. And that he likes the taste of lion blood. And I just thought, I don't know, was the huntsman, because he was referred to several times, was it somebody significant, or was it just a case of every village had a huntsman and the huntsman was the you know, wielded some kind of power because he brought, you know, the food back to the village. But also this reference again to Lem looking like a knight, and Tansy saying that about his dirty cloak and that it's hiding his true identity, and that really is a knight of the King's Guard, which was all like, ho, 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 you know, said in jest. But it was like, if he was a knight of the King's Guard, was he part of like Rhaegar's little group of King's Guard? You know, is he one of Rhaegar's King's Guard that was either at the Tower of Joy or maybe at Harrenhal plotting with Rhaegar to dethrone the Mad King?
Sorry, who's this you're talking about?
Lem and Cloak.
Yeah. He's a squire, right?
Mm.
Is that the theory? No.
That he was Rhaegar's squire.
Yeah, no, is that not right? Did I get that wrong?
No. No, Rhaegar. I think Rhaegar's squire was Miles Mouton, and he was killed at the battle, at the Ned's battle at Stony Set.
Why did I get that wrong?
So she kind of just does this laughable, you know, this throwaway line of like, "Oh, your cloak's so dirty," and again, as readers, that's what we focus on, and she kind of just this throwaway comment of, you know, we know that you keep it that way because if you washed it, we'd all know that you were a knight of the King's Guard. So is he? And I mean, and Arya in a previous chapter has described Lem's like appearance as being quite like he's very tall and knightly. He doesn't seem to be, you know, he doesn't seem as though he's kind of originated like growing up on the road and part of the small folk. And I wonder what his true identity really is. Yeah, and then of course, go on.
Sorry, no, it's just when you get details of Tom of Sevens and, you know, all the bastards he has and the girls, like he seems more of that world than Lem does for sure.
So Meridian saying that Lem is Richard Lonmouth, who I think was one of Rhaegar's men. Is that right, Meridian? I'm not entirely sure who.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of.
Is.
I know
I've heard of it. I've heard of that before. That I think it's the cloak, the yellow cloak that he wears is similar to the sigil of House Lonmouth, and there's like isn't it bats or something on a yellow background? I'm getting completely confused, but I have heard that before. Yeah.
Just on the Mad Huntsman, he strikes me as one of those characters that George sneaks in case he needs to have someone in that position that he can reveal later as being Rhaegar or whoever. You know, that like, I'm not saying he is Rhaegar, but just that he can be a character that we can come back to. It's a great name, the Mad Huntsman. It's a great backstory. Yeah, you know, he's a proper Robin Hood figure.
Yes,
time of famine, and he's almost foreshadowing of the Hound in a way, what the Hound might be or might become. But he's a very interesting character. I don't know if he's mentioned again after Storm. I think that's it.
I'm not sure.
But yeah, he like more. I think, you know, if there were more characters like that, that we watch out for, because I think he is one of those characters that he could be anyone and he could come back, and that would be fun if he came back actually.
Skulls and Kisses is the Lonmouth sigil. Skulls and like lips, like kisses and skulls on a yellow background. Nice. Yeah, he's definitely somebody. So we get this almost incest kind of, with like Bella and Gendry being quite clearly both being King Robert's bastards, and she's kind of like, you know, flirting with him and stuff, and he just screams no and runs away.
Yeah, Sonny pointed out, but Gendry doesn't know who he is at this stage.
He doesn't know. He doesn't. He's not going, oh my God, this is potential incest. We as readers, it's that. And again, it's just those words. And I know that it's supposed to be all like, oh, you know, the Lord's kiss in the cave, and like this is a bit of a racy chapter. But that little nugget that was dropped in about the clansmen and incest and what the wildlings think about incest, and there's just little sort of like potential nuggets of this throughout these chapters. And here we have Bella and Gendry, who and none of them know. Arya doesn't know, Bella doesn't know, Gendry, they don't, you know, nobody really, well, certainly Gendry and Bella don't know that, you know, who their father is.
No, for me, it's definitely Gendry having a John moment. I think that's what he's doing there, and he comes back and saves Arya in this little brothel, and she notices that people are laughing more. She doesn't really get drinking, and she doesn't really get sex, and this old man sits down and starts coming on to her, and I don't think she fully gets what's happening. And then Gendry comes along and saves the day, but he's angry with her because, you know, she says something like, "You're not my brother," and he gets angry. He says, "Of course I'm not. You'd never have me as your brother," blah, blah, blah. And I feel like he's having a bit of an existential crisis, which will lead him to make the decision he'll make. But also, Gendry is very well placed to explain why these groups attract people to them. You know, whether it's the Brotherhood Without Banners, or, you know, the Night's Watch, or the King's Guard, or the sellswords, or whatever it is. Because there are so many people out there without families and without places to go, and Gendry is one of them. And
he's right for that sense of belonging, isn't he?
Yeah, and no matter how close you get to somebody who's highborn and who has a house that they belong to, and that is, you know, verified by the social status and social the culture and everything, he's still, like, as much as they've been through with Arya, he still knows that they'll never be able to bridge that class gap. She doesn't really get that.
No, she doesn't. But and he does. He's constantly that, like, he just feels incredibly uncomfortable that she's a highborn lady and sat in a brothel, and this shouldn't be happening. I need to get her out of here. I feel responsible for her being in contact with these commoners and whores and what have you. You know, I need to. She's Arya Stark. She's a highborn lady. He seems to, you're right. He seems to have much more reverence for her position than she does.
I think his instinct is to protect her, like as if she's his sister. And then her reaction reminds him, oh, this is how she sees me. But that isn't how she sees him. She just doesn't see him as one of her pack, as her actual brothers. And I don't know why, because that isn't true. Like the way she spoke about these guys at the beginning of this book, when she wasn't Arya Stark, she was definitely thinking of them more in the lines of brothers.
Yeah.
And now that they've put her into the girl role again, which she's not comfortable with at all, and back into the Arya Stark role again, she is starting to lose that connection with him, I think, without even realizing it. But yeah, it's a lucky break for her, because God knows what would have happened to her with that old fella. But it does remind me of the Mercy chapter.
Somebody actually asked for mercy, you know, asking for water. And she has a wolf dream at the end of this chapter, which is a good, positive one. Everything's great. There's no fear. Everything smells good. And she has this, again, this sense of belonging, I guess, of feeling that she's in a pack and hunting in a pack. And then this is all woken up by the Brotherhood Without Banners bringing back... and I genuinely, at the end of this chapter, because I've got it on audio, and Stuart was listening to a bit of it in the background, and the end of the chapter where it's like, oh, when her prayers were answered, this Lannister, you know, it might not be the Kingslayer, but this Lannister person, and it's like, and I'm sat there going, who is it? Who's that? I can't remember. And he was like, it's the Hound.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that. So
yeah,
that must be what happens next.
When I first read this, I thought, oh, is it Jaime? Who's coming? I got confused. Like when not now, but when I first read this. But yeah, it's the Hound coming, and it's great because Dany uses almost the exact same thing, that her prayers are answered.
Yes.
Like there's so many parallels between these characters in this book in particular, with Dany and Arya.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and I like the way she's reciting her list, and she changes up the order of it so that she won't forget it.
Yeah, it keeps it fresh.
Minded. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, this girl is just tailor-made for assassin. For an assassin's den. But yeah, that's all I have for Arya.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's 2 very short chapters, actually, those 2.
And the next chapter, oh gosh, I didn't write down. Do you have the next chapters? Wait now. I have them here. By the way, the next live event is linked down below, folks. So if you want to go check it out, we'll be back on Sundays as normal.
Back to Sundays, yeah.
Back to Sundays. And it'll be Sundays. Well, depending on how your job goes, it'll be Sundays from here on out.
Yeah.
Let me just see. Sorry, folks. I should have had this ready. Usually I write it down, but you know, jet lag and all that. It is. Come on. So for next week, it is. Yes, thank you, YouTube. Please show me. Thank you. Oh,
you got special. Let me see if I can find it.
Sorry, my phone is in the other side of the apartment, charging. Anyway.
Okay, so we've got.
Thanks,
the next one is chapter. Oh, scrolled far too far. Sorry, what number is it? Chapter.
Oh, here, it's down below. I'm so stupid. It's in the description box because I'm very organized. It's Jon 4 to Cat 4.
So we've got Jon, Daenerys, Sansa, Arya, Jon. Is that right?
Yep. Jon. No. Jaime, yeah. Because
so we've got 2 Jon chapters next week.
No, just 1, I think. Because the week after is Davos 4 to Jon 5, unless I've made a mistake. Have I made a mistake?
Hang on, no, it could. Sorry, it's me. Where are we? Jon, Jaime, Tyrion. Yeah, I've got them in completely the wrong order.
Okay, grand. Yeah, and we're coming towards the end of the first book, I think. So if you're reading it in 2 parts, if you're reading the German version, it's in like 10 parts or something. So yeah, we've got Jaime, we've got Tyrion, we've got Sam. Oh yeah, another Sam.
Oh chapter. Great, another Sam chapter. Good.
And good. Yeah, Arya. So and Cat, back to Cat, your favorite.
Okay.
So yeah, that Jon chapter, by the way, is like tiny.
Okay.
Very small chapter.
Good.
So folks, we'll be back at 7 p.m. UK time here on Sunday. And yeah, so that's Jon 4 to Cat 4. Thanks so much, Claire, and thanks to everybody who joined us in the chat. And I hope you all have a great week. All right, bye, folks.
Bye.